eternal, yet ever new. His advent and His proximity, His mystical leelas and His songs, every mischief and miracle a message memorable, every pain and travail a precept enacted. As the bud blossomed to reveal 1,000 petals, it can only be said that the fragrance of the first few years was unique.
Seshamaraju had a very high ambition for his younger brother. He said, "You should become a high clerk in the government office." Imagine if that had happened, what would have happened to all of us. Finally, he comes and he says, best is to take this boy, put him in the school again. I'm taking him back to URAVAKONda. And this happened, as we said, in May 23rd and the following days. So he said it was June, July, the time of the year when the academic year begins. So he says, I'm taking him back. I'm going to put him in the URAVAKONda school. He will be normal after that. So Swami is taken back, enrolled in URAVAKONda school, and things are in an uneasy peace. Swami is fine, but Swami is continuing his bhajans. But this time, he starts something called the Thursday bhajans. On Thursdays, there are worship. During this period, when Swami is in URAVAKONda, he becomes friends with two students in the school, especially one. A little boy, might not be Swami's class, around the same age, by name Narsimhadas, and his sister Subbaratnamma. And this Narsimhadas and Subbaratnamma are the children of Anjaneyulu and Bhagyalakshmi, the excise inspector who is living in URAVAKONda. Little more than a couple of months back, we realized that Narsimhadas Garu is still alive. The Telugu team in Radio SAI went and interviewed him. A very beautiful recollection. In that he says that how so easily he became one of the members in that Anjaneyulu household. The mother and father grew very fond of Satyam, quite understandably. And the other interesting thing about Anjaneyulu was he was already a devotee of Shirdi Baba. He was already worshipping Shirdi Baba. He had a picture of Shirdi Baba. So Swami would come and Swami also would join him in the worship of Shirdi Baba. Swami used to sit and do bhajans. He used to lead the bhajans. And slowly that Thursday bhajans started being a regular feature in Anjaneyulu's house. Swami would come in the morning. After he leaves his house, Seshamaraju's house, he would come straight to Anjaneyulu's house. Sometimes have breakfast at their house when requested by Anjaneyulu and his wife. After that, Swami would go along with Subbaratnamma and Narsimhadas to school. So for those few months that Swami lived in URAVAKONda, every day these two little children, Narsimhadas and Subbaratnamma, would walk with Swami to school. After classes, meet Swami again and walk back to their house. Swami would spend some time in their house. And this person grew very fond of Swami. He would address Swami like one of the children in the house. And Swami too would call them, Amma Nana, like how he would call his mother and father. So many times when he was an excise inspector, he would go on government duty and he would ask the children, what do you want? So each one would say, we would like to have some toffees, some chocolates, some clothes and some toys. So one day he asked Swami, he said, Satyam, what can I get for you? And Swami said, get me a statue of Shirdi Baba. So this man was surprised. He was a worshipper of Shirdi Baba, but he had never come across a statue of Shirdi Baba. So he said, I've never seen, where can I get it? Satyam told him that, don't worry, you go into the fair, there you will find the statue. And that is when he goes and he finds the statue, and this is that very statue. And when we spoke to Shri Narsimhadas Garu, he said that surprisingly it's an ordinary statue, maybe made of terracotta or something like that. But even to this day, it is in the possession of that family. It has been passed on to his son. In URAVAKONda school too, Swami started becoming a famous poet. He would write plays. And interestingly, we've not gone into that. There are a lot of plays which Swami wrote which was very popular there, and one of it was a play called Parijata Apaharana. It's a famous story of Krishna getting the Parijata flower and giving to Rukmini. That kind of makes Satyabhama very jealous, and she asks for the whole tree. Swami would be the writer, Swami would be the director, Swami would take the role. But in this particular drama, as we all know, the hero is actually Krishna. But instead of taking the role of Krishna, Swami takes the role of Satyabhama and gives the role of Krishna to Narsimdas. But many years later, when he recollects this particular choice of casting, he says that there is one particular scene where Satyabhama kicks Krishna with her feet. So because Swami became Satyabhama and he was Krishna, he had the divine opportunity of being kicked by Swami. And he says many years later, he writes an article saying that the fortunate one to be kicked by the Lord himself.
Parijata Apaharanam was not the only drama that Swami wrote. There are many dramas that Swami wrote, and the most famous among them is the one called Cheppinatlu Chestara. When Swami came to the URAVAKONDA school, he was a hero. Means everyone had heard about, oh God, you know what all this boy has done already. The first day when he walked, possibly everyone spoke in hushed tones in the corridors. But that would happen only for a little time because Satyam was so jovial, so loving, so kind. He soon became everybody's friend. Everybody adored him. And as Prem said, every Thursday, there would be no afternoon classes for Satyam. Because it was accepted that every Thursday he is possessed by Shirdi Baba. Actually, the school also shuts down because he goes and sits on the Lord's pedestal and the teachers and students come and sit in the devotees' pedestal. There would be a line and like an interview it would be going on. So that was how Swami became a hero in school. He was the monitor in the class. This is a very, very rare photograph. This is possibly the first ever photograph of the young Swami. This is the ground in which Swami would lead the prayer. The building on the other side is the school. So Swami would lead the prayer with Ahar Ahatava. That prayer is still there in what was Swami's classroom. Swami's classroom has been converted into a little mini shrine there, and today it is the staff room. They don't hold any classes there. On the other side of the staff room is all the books. One devotee who has got this altar and all made because he wants that place to be preserved. And yes, as I was saying about the drama, Cheppinatlu Chestara, I don't think we need to go into it. It's a very famous play where Swami said that one needs to inculcate unity in thought, word and deed. You say something but do another thing, no use, because manas anyat, vachas anyat, karman anyat, duratmanam, vachas ekam, manas ekam, karman ekam, mahatmanam. The foremost property or nature of a great person, of the great one, is that he has the same thought, the same words and the same deeds. There is unity, harmony in thought, word and deed. One of his teachers there, his name is Manchiraju Tammiraju. Manchiraju Tammiraju is possibly one of the earliest devotees of Swami because he always looked at Swami as God. And he always worshipped Swami. In fact, he wrote the first ever kind of Satcharitra on Swami even as he was a boy. Swami had not yet told, I'm God, and yet this teacher fully dedicated. He started writing Shatakams on Swami, he started writing Swami's story. So there were teachers who started naming children after Satyam. It started off that time itself. And one of the earliest episodes that took place in this time is very similar to what happened in Shirdi Baba's life. A Muslim horse cart owner has lost his mare, and he comes and asks Swami, and Swami tells that your mare is there beyond the hills over here, points out the exact location.
And this started becoming a common practice. When people would lose things, they would come and ask Swami, and Swami would say that it is here, and it's been taken by this person, or you've misplaced it in this such and such a place. So one particular teacher in the URAVAKONDA school, he came to Swami and he said, Satyam, I've lost a very, very expensive pen. And very casually, little Satyam, he says, the pen has been taken away by your servant. And this teacher absolutely does not accept this. He says that, this person has been in my service for so many decades. He's a very trusted servant of mine. It cannot be possible that he could steal something from me. Because if it is not true, and he will be in a very uncomfortable situation. So he expresses this to Satyam, and Satyam gives a solution. Many years later, when Swami would talk to students, Swami would say, no, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and all those other things are fine. There's one special yoga which you have to learn. And Swami would say, Adera, Knack Yoga. You should speak obligingly. You may not be always be able to oblige, but should speak obligingly. So Swami would say that Knack Yoga, all of you have to learn. And that is what Swami taught here in this particular thing. Because Swami suggested to this teacher, he said, all right, don't ask this man directly, but you write a letter as I am telling you. So Swami dictated a letter in which this person is actually writing as though the servant is sending a letter to his son who's studying in Anantapur. So the letter reads that hope you're fine, hope you're studying well and all that. And there it is written, are you keeping the gift I gave you carefully? Please be very careful, it's a very expensive gift. Okay, these lines are written, and this letter is posted to this servant's son who's studying in Anantapur. Now this boy, he receives the letter, he knows that his father is illiterate. Father does not write letters. He always dictates to somebody who writes it and gives it to him, and it's posted. So after 3-4 days, promptly a reply comes, yes father, I'm using the pen which you gave very carefully. I understand it's a very good pen. I'm taking good care of it. So this was how Swami not only helped him find the pen, but also taught him that sometimes that knack yoga, how do you use it?
Though most of the teachers loved Swami, there was one teacher, his name was H.S. Venkatramana. He had been recognized, he had won the President's Award for the best science teacher. And so naturally he prided himself with science, which people foolishly think is against spirituality. If you are a man of science, how can you believe in God? One Thursday he joined this queue and he came to Swami and he said, prove to me that you are God. Swami said, what do you want me to do? He had a cocoa nut. In chocolate you put cocoa nut, and he said, I will break this nut, you tell me how many pieces it will break into. Swami said it will break into 5 pieces. He broke it, it broke into 5. And he said, lucky fellow, and he walked off. And after some time, it so happened that this same Venkatramana became very, very sick. He had severe stomachache, high fever, and nothing seemed to be working. That is when his wife told him, Swami often says women have far greater devotion than men. Once in Trai he was narrating the same, speaking about a lady who is putting rangoli outside, said, I've not spoken to her from years. I need not speak to her also, yet she will come. But you people, I don't know, if I don't speak, you'll leave me and go off. So I have to speak to you. While it is an honor and privilege that we get to depend physically on Swami, it is a greater honor and a greater privilege if we can lead our lives in such a manner that Swami depends on us. So it was the case there also. The wife said, you go, that is God. And she came to Swami. She joined the queue one Thursday. And when she came, even before she could speak, Swami said, I know why you have come. He materialized Vibhuti and said, you give this to your husband. He'll be fine. He was fine and then became a staunch devotee of Swami. We spoke about Abdul Khader. Abdul Khader was that student leader who had actually held Swami when he got his fits and all that. This was the time when India was really getting ready to overthrow foreign rule. So he wanted to ask Swami, Swami, I want to join this movement. We will get independence, right? Swami told him, irrespective of what it is, on the 15th of August 1947, India will get Purna Swaraj. It was only after India actually got Purna Swaraj on 15th August 1947 that Abdul Qadir broke down. And you know, there are many like this. One more incident that comes to mind is a little later, we're going to the Pathamandiram days in 1950, the January of 1950. One of Swami's sisters, the younger one, she was expectant and she was about to deliver. If I remember right, it was the 14th of January and there was some complication in the delivery. Swami was in the Pathamandiram and they were wondering what to do. There was no doctor nearby. Swami said, I will come. And they were wondering, how can you allow a man into a woman's delivery room? He puts his foot inside the room, closes both the door on his foot and says, do whatever, it will be fine. And a girl child is born. And Swami says, I will name her. And they ask for the name and Swami says, name her Samrajya Lakshmi. And they ask Swami, Swarajya Lakshmi. Because she is Lakshmi born in independent India. 1950 India was independent. Swami said, no. Samrajya Lakshmi. They verify once again and because Swami insists, they have named her Samrajya Lakshmi. India becomes a Samrajya. India becomes a republic on the 26th of January 1950.
Many years later, I remember once in Trai, it seems Swami came out and Swami told the devotees around that this morning, such and such a devotee who lives in Delhi, he had a heart attack. So all those people around were very surprised. So Swami said, don't worry, I've taken over it myself. I was sick a little in the morning, but now I'm fine. So I've taken it over, he's fine now. So immediately after darshan, these people go up and they call up this particular devotee and they said, are you fine? This is what Swami said. That Swami said, you're having a heart attack. And that man had no clue. He said, I'm absolutely fine. I didn't even have discomfort, forget about attack or pain. So in the afternoon, they come back to Swami and they said, Swami, we actually called this person and he asked. And Swami's reply was very beautiful. He said, when I've decided to take it over, you think I'm going to give him side effects and then take it over? So many times, Swami would have done so much for each one of us sitting here. But it is very few times when Swami shows, when Swami reveals, when Swami lets us know that he has done something which is so special. You know, we're talking about the school days of Swami, Uravakondha days, Bukkapatnam days. It is quite understandable that many of these little children who are Swami's classmates, little children who, as Arvind was saying, who were hero worshipping Swami in the school, would have later come back to visit Swami, isn't it? After Swami had established himself, there was a mandir, there was Prashanti Nilayam. One such boy was a Muslim student who was studying in Uravakondha. His name was Miran Moinuddin. One day he had come. He thought that maybe Swami might not recognize me because he's become a SATHYA Baba, right? He's quite renowned not only in Puttaparthi, not only in Anantapur. People from Bangalore and Delhi and Chennai and all are coming. So he comes and he becomes part of the devotees group there sitting. And Swami comes and calls him by a name which just that one word is enough. He knows that Swami has recognized him absolutely perfectly. Why? Because when those Uravakondha days, when Swami used to do the Thursday bhajans, a lot of these classmates used to come. They also used to take part in bhajans because you never know, with Swami, every moment is a surprise. So all these little children would come for that excitement. You don't know when Swami would materialize something, when Swami would give something. But bhajans is there, how can we not have prasadam? So after bhajans, some devotee would arrange for prasadam. Most often the Anjaneyulu household.
Some of the people, they had issued orders that if anyone sees our children with this Satyam, you catch them and give them a sound beating. So all these children used to be very scared. Therefore, Miran Moinuddin, whom Prem was speaking about, had been assigned the duty of a watchman. And the minute anybody is coming, he'll give a warning so that everybody can disperse. Whenever he completes his watchman duty successfully, Swami would ensure that he is always given a double dosage of prasadam. The prasadam that was cooked at Anjaneyulu's household. When Moinuddin came and he was sitting and thinking, will Swami remember me? And as Swami came for darshan, Swami walks near and Moinuddin sits up, Swami looks at him and says, "Hey, Prasadam Bhakta, you have come." And with that one sentence, the whole bond is rekindled. How many of us have experienced this? Where Swami with one look, one word, one smile, one expression kindles in us an eternity of love and connection, and we begin to feel that, you know what, Swami took avatarhood only for my sake.
When we started the first day, we started with a small poem which Swami says, where Swami says, "Tanavari gurtimpa tarali vache." He said, "I have come to recognize those that belong to me, those that were always mine, those that are mine, those that always shall be mine." Many years later, one of our students, he had completed his studies. He decided to stay back here. But for some reason, Swami told him that this is not the place for you. You have to go back and live with your parents. So this boy was trying his best to stay back, and Swami was trying his best to throw him out. So Swami would come and give him all kinds of threats. Swami called him for an interview and told him very calmly. He did not hear. Swami told him very rudely. He did not hear. Swami said, "You won't sit with boys anymore, sit with devotees." He did not hear. He was told that you should go back home. He went and came back the very evening. So Swami didn't know what to do with this boy. One day Swami walks up to him. The boy is sitting in darshan. He looks at him and says, "Hey, look, today if you don't go home, this Janma Janmantara bandham which I have with you, the bandham which I have for all these births, I will snap it today if you don't go home today." And the boys around were shocked. What is Swami telling like this? This is like the greatest threat you can get from Swami. Now this boy starts laughing. This boy is laughing at Swami's face, and Swami got infuriated. He said, "I'm telling you something which a devotee would dread to hear, and you're laughing at me." And this boy said, "Swami, at least in this context, you accepted that we have some Janma Janmantara bandham." So many of us go without knowing that. And Swami was so happy with this answer of his. Swami called him for an interview. This is what, when we say that, with these little children who came, Swami recognized them. Swami recognized many of his classmates and class teachers who came later. Because Swami was here verily for that. He said, "I have come to recognize those that belong to me. There is a crowd of humanity, there is a sea of humanity. I have come to pick those that belong to me." If you read Satyam Shivam Sundaram, part 1, part 2, part 3, one particular experience which keeps repeating is when Swami would do a transcorporeal journey. Swami would go, leave his body, go in to help some devotee. Probably the first recorded transcorporeal journey was what happened in Uravakonda. It was the Dashara vacation, October month. Sushilama Garu, the sister-in-law of Swami, she had taken her 2 children and gone back to Kamalapuram, which was her mother's place, for the vacation. One fine day, Satyam and his brother Seshamaraju were sitting and having their lunch. It was around 11 o'clock in the morning. They get a telegram saying that, "Baby very serious, come immediately with Satyam." This was a telegram from his wife. Swami is just eating his food. Swami actually falls into a faint. And then after a few minutes, Swami comes back and Swami says, "Let us start, but by the time we reach there, the child will be all right." And they take up the journey. They go to Kamalapuram. When they go to Kamalapuram, as Swami said, the child is absolutely fine.
Playing, in fact.
Playing in front of the door when they reach, actually. So when they ask Sushilama Garu, "What happened? You said the child is serious, but now the child seems to be normal." And then she says that around 11 o'clock, after we sent you that telegram, one particular sadhu came. We asked him, "Where are you coming from?" Apparently, he must have come from that train which goes from Bombay to Chennai, because that is the only train which goes through Kamalapuram that time. And he said, "I'm coming from Shirdi." He was a sadhu, and he gave vibhuti or udi, whatever it was. After administering it, he's fine. Then Seshamaraju realizes that exactly that 11 o'clock which was being described here, that was the very time that Satyam actually fell into a faint. So probably this was the first transcorporeal journey of Swami which was recorded, and that happened in Uravakonda too.